Listen to the radio. Harry and Edna's want to show you heard it from the Three Bells.
Whatto, Harry?
And whatto, Edna. And in case you wanted to know what that rattling was, no, that isn't me loosening my loose change in my wallet, because that never happens. That's kept firmly under lock and key. Young Edna is receding back to her childhood with a rather... Well, she's not into Meccano, which all sensible people are involved in.
No, Harry, I'm reliving my childhood with my own children, which is always a proud parent moment when they're into the things that you're into. And I'm rebuilding our Lego collection. Hurrah!
Yes, and you haven't obliged me yet by building me a Lego Bren gun.
No, I haven't, I'm afraid. Sorry.
What we're going to do when the balloon goes up?
Well, I can offer you an airport, a riding school, a police van, a Lego helicopter, police helicopter. We've got Helm's Deep. Is that any good? That's all we've built so far.
Helm's Deep.
What ho?
You've guessed it. She's still building, what is it, Helm's Deep or Sci-Fi City or whatever it is you'll build?
No, we're on to our Lego police van with Robber. You see, we've got all these Lego boxes, and I'm a little bit obsessive with my Lego. We kind of reenact the Lego movie, really, with me being the grown-up with the Craggle, and my kids kind of morphing all the different Lego together. I believe a Lego has to be kept pure and in its entirety as it was meant to be built, and you don't cross over all the genres and the bits of Lego. So we are actually rebuilding it and putting it lovingly back into its boxes.
I think you're revealing a whole new side to us. You'll be talking about CBBC and Sarah Jane Honeywell and things like that in future, because we normally talk about vintagey things. We should be talking about Lego and hoops and a rope and skipping ropes.
Well, there was Lego around, wasn't there? I'm not sure when Lego was invented, actually. Was it 50s, 40s? Anyhow.
Twitter us. We're on @Harry and Edna. Tell us when Lego was invented, because I honestly don't know. And you can tweet us anytime you like. In fact, if you wake up at 4 a.m. and you're a bit bored, do your Lego research and tweet to let us know when Lego was invented. Now, you've got to put down this Helm's Deep that you've got by your fingertips, because you've got to get on your bicycle and cycle over to Upton House. And why are you going to go to Upton House after this very track?
Because they've got an interesting exhibition all about banking for victory.
Victory?
Victory being victory in World War II. So we're banking for victory.
So you better jump on the old jalopy or the old push bike and cycle like mad, because it's in darkest Warwickshire. So you've got a fair way to go, and you've only got until the end of this record.
What ho?
We're here today at a National Trust property called Upton House, and I'm talking today to Visitor Services Manager Heidi. Heidi, can you tell our listeners the link between Upton House and World War II?
Upton House has been around for quite a while, but its heyday really came in the late 1920s when it was bought by Lord Bearstead. He was the son of the founder of Shell Oil, and so when he inherited the wealth and the chairmanship from his father, he set about looking for a country home in Warwickshire, and that's where he found Upton House. And they lived here quite happily through the 30s, enjoying the life, and then come the outbreak of war, it was really then that things changed dramatically for Upton House. So the family moved out, and the family-owned bank, M. Samuel and Co., moved in. And so they were here for the duration of the war from 1939 all the way right up to 1946.
I guess it was a big decision for the family to move out of their really quite comfortable, large, grand family house here.
Well, Lord Bearsted was chairman of the bank and as well, so it was really his decision and his call. And in fact, he was busy doing his own secret war work, which he'd been doing all the way in the lead up to the outbreak of war. So they were really more than happy to move out. They went to London, lived in the Dorchester, the safest place in London apparently. So they moved out there and continued their good work, working for special operations. And Lady Bearsted worked for in the home front kind of task with tea windows and helping people around bomb London.
So are you able to tell our listeners what the secret war work is that they were up to?
Well, that's a really good question. We've recently found out Lord Bearsted's code name, which was K. And if you come and visit, you'll find out lots more through some of the displays we've got. But one of the things that was really important was through the Kinder transport, which was during the build-up to war, which was getting Jewish children safely out of Europe and over to England. As a Jewish family themselves, it was a cause they were really, really interested in supporting. They donated huge amounts of money as well and to secure the city banks, insurance houses. And they risked lots of things as well through the company over the Atlantic to convey the diplomatic things that were going on. So there was quite a lot of work he was involved with at quite a high level with governments and with American leaders as well.
So he sort of risked, I guess, this nice, secure, steady family life, being heavily involved in business, sort of risked all that for playing his part for the war effort, which, as you say, was really important. They found the cause really important.
That's right. I think they've been so involved in supporting and aware of what was going on in Europe during the build-up that it was really only natural, knowing his connections. And particularly what was useful was that Shell Oil Company had so many connections through the Suez Canal, and so their trade networks were well established, and it would mean a lot of secret spy work could happen using those channels, which was really important.
How would you get to be involved in this secret war work? Because, as you say, he had the connections, he was already there doing a lot of this work, that it was quite a simple transition.
I imagine it's probably a bit of both. I mean, he was, as a character, very philanthropic. That's how he led his life. So I think partly that's how it would have worked.
What ho?
So Lord Bearsted really got involved probably through his connections, through the company's connections, but probably through the work that he'd been doing in the build-up to the war with the Kinder transport and talking to governments and what have you throughout the kind of 1930s. He was a very philanthropic character. They did a lot of work with Jewish people in this country and also abroad, supporting them, supporting Jewish artists. Obviously, art was a big passion of his as well.
And so Lady Bearsted, she actually got her hands on and got quite down and dirty with the people of the East End of London. And this is a lady who'd spent her time out in the countryside being the lady of the manor. And she got stuck in as well.
Definitely. I mean, as an East End family originally, I think their roots were, really quite firmly fixed back then. They did lots of work with local art galleries in the past in the East End of London to try and bring art to that area. So going back to that area was not a challenge for them. In fact, it was probably something they felt really passionate about.
And do you think she wanted to be doing something that was very hands-on? Was she that kind of a character? She wanted to be there in amongst the people, helping them out as best she could?
Definitely. They weren't the sort of family who were sort of showing off and having parties all the time. They were quite a quiet family in that respect. Lady Bearsted, when she moved here, got really stuck into the whole design of the garden, the layout, how the borders should be, and was really key to designing that element of the house that they lived in and enjoyed, and handed over during the war.
And she, if I'm right, she helped on some of the tea wagons or organised some of these wagons that went into some of the bombed out areas in the East End of London. Did she actually visit them herself?
Yes, we've got photos of her at them, particularly with the Red Cross, which was one of the charities she worked with. I think her influence, along with Lord Bearsted, at quite a high level was really important in her support. And we're finding out so much more as part of this project, which has sort of been a 2-year project. We've done lots and lots and lots of research, gone out to all these companies and organisations that we'd not really known about the back history of what they were doing during that time. So we've had a lot of volunteer researchers go out, look through archive materials from the banks and find out a little bit more about and try and piece it together, really.
Were they a well-respected family for the war work that they're doing? Did that sort of help to raise their profile in the public domain as well as the business domain?
I think, to be honest, because most of it was secret, it suited them. They were not that kind of showy-off family. It wasn't spoken about after the war as a lot of things, and then they just kind of carried on with their lives and their business. In fact, Lord Bearsted died shortly after the war in 1948, so he was alive long enough just to see his paintings come back from their wartime hideaway, and then unfortunately he passed away at that point. Also going to add that their 3 sons were involved in the war. 2 of them were fighting in the Middle East, and the third one was helping Lord Bearsted through the spy networks that the company had been able to support.
And all of them survived the duration of war?
Yes, they did. The Lord Bearsted who took over, he was injured quite heavily in the war, so he then lived in Upton House and redefined it and renovated it slightly to adapt for him because he was in a wheelchair.
And just going back to the art, Lord Bearsted was an avid art collector, or was he an artist and an art collector?
Not so much an artist himself, but a very well-respected and very clever art collector. He was passionate about art. He was chairman of the gallery, the National Gallery, also in the Tate and various other organisations. He would have been well aware and involved in the plans for saving the nation's art in the event of war, and the plans that they had for them to sort of hide them away in the Welsh slate mines and all the preparation. And we have a lovely letter that he wrote to the coordinator of these plans saying, some of my collection, obviously very important, would you have space for, a few of my small ones? And he was able to save 40 of his, say, 160 paintings that were based here at Upton. Originally, he thought Upton House was a very safe place in the middle of the Warwickshire countryside, but then they went and built an airfield only a few miles away on the very edge of his land. And suddenly it was not going, he didn't feel it was the safest place for his art collection, because that was irreplaceable. The art we've got here is of international importance. We've got lots of old masters from Bosch, El Greco, and a whole range of really old masters in our picture gallery. So many of the paintings come from that collection, as well as some of the Dutch paintings we have. And they were all packed up, shipped away, and we tell part of that story as part of our sort of wartime overview.
So he felt it was important enough to say goodbye to his pictures for the duration of war, and I guess trust in the network that they would be kept safe and secure.
I think definitely, because he was involved in the plans and understood how well the nation's art was being looked after. I think he had complete confidence in what was being organised. In fact, we're finding out a little bit more now about what the National Gallery were doing and how they were making sure that conditions in a mine, a slate mine underground, how can you keep paintings in a stable condition? Some of them are hundreds of years old. You don't want to risk flaking paint and difficulties with the images themselves. So there was a lot of monitoring that went on through the mines in order to prepare them and the way to sack them and what have you. So, yeah, lots of preparation and thought went into it. So he would have known all that and been very happy, I would have thought.
What ho?
This is Harry and Edna on the wireless, and we're enjoying learning all about banking in World War II. And if you are enjoying the show, do you know you can hear it over and over again? Simply go to harryandedna.co.uk, click on the tab that says wireless, and you can find out all the wonderful ways of how you can hear the show and listen to the entire back catalogue, because we're available by streaming, podcast, FM radio, internet radio. Yes, we're 101 ways you can listen to Harry and Edna on the wireless. Now, young Edna is still finding out all about banking, so after this next track, I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more about wartime banking at Upton House, which is in sunny Warwickshire.
What ho?
So as the family moved out and they went to their luxury residence, I guess, at the Dorchester Hotel, and the house was taken over by the bank, how did they adapt the house?
That's right. It was quite a unique and bizarre opportunity. There were 22 bank staff stationed here, some of whom would have lived here in dormitories as well, the sort of single bank staff. Some of the married bank staff were billeted in local villages or local towns or on the estate somewhere. So it really became a completely new community. Some of these people had never been out of London. We can see from all the records we have of the bank that they were all bought a pair of Wellington boots so they could get around. Obviously, we're 7 miles from the nearest train and the nearest town here, so you'd have had to walk or cycle everywhere. We have some really lovely information from some of the people who used to work here, from their memoirs, and particularly one of them, Barney Adler, wrote that actually for them it was a really good war. They weren't faced with bombing. They were in a glorious countryside, and come the summer, it would have been a beautiful atmosphere to work, long evenings, and they would go on cycle rides on their days off around. But while they were working, during the bank hours, they would have been working very hard on some quite different things. It's not a normal bank, it's a merchant bank. So they would have been very much about business and about huge loans to different countries and about shipping and making how money moves around. So it's quite a complex sort of understanding. So it would have been a very different kind of operation as to how we might imagine it to be. And I think they were very instrumental in sort of informing government about what was going on and where money was flowing. And that sort of thing, really, funding business was really important during the war, to making sure that, everything can still be manufactured that needs to be. So the 22 bank staff who lived here and worked here had a very different life. They stripped out the long gallery, which is a great big long room for dancing and parties, really, in the 30s, took all the furniture out, put in desks and a typing pool, and that's really where their main working area was, all in one long room, a hierarchy, from the junior staff all the way up to the private secretary at the end, whose desk faced the other way, facing down the row. But the porcelain and the artwork was still on the walls around them as they were typing. So, imagine working in an art gallery, essentially doing your day job with all this amazing stuff around you. Quite amazing, really.
Was the idea to protect the staff by moving them here, or was it sort of coupled with that if you bring them to a much quieter environment, because I'm assuming if you're in London, it's a busy, noisy, bustly place. You've got what's going on with the war, all the sort of leftover from the bombing and the wreckage that you're trying to fight your way around. If you transport those people to a country setting where it's nice and quiet, is there a better output for them because they can concentrate? They don't have to fight the daily battles that you would have to fight in London.
I think that was definitely one of the compelling arguments for moving it. The bank itself was housed in the Shell building in London, where all the Shell management happened from as well. And I think the importance of the work of the bank needing to continue was so significant that they really felt that actually there was a possibility that a small number of people could come here, and that core work, just from one department of the bank, could carry on undisturbed, and really, as you say, focus on it without all the distractions and kind of what was going on in London, particularly for the staff themselves, who would have obviously been affected by everything that was happening in London with sort of the bombings and so forth. So yeah, definitely would have been a problem.
I know for some of them, when we walked down the long gallery, and when you look out the windows, you're looking out on some stunning views out into the countryside. Do you think they would have found that distracting, or were they so focused on the work that they had to do that I guess if you see it every day, you don't necessarily see it every day?
To be honest, I think it's exactly right. To start with, they would have been, awestruck. But I think actually, knowing from working in a place like this myself, you get used to it. Yeah. It's just how it is. And I think the work they were really focused on. So in that case, it would have just evolved naturally. And because they were here for such a long period of time, the duration of the war, I suspect it all pretty much rolled into one, and it just became everyday life. But yeah, they were lucky enough to be able to use the garden and wander in it, to use the swimming pool in the summer, and some really other lovely privileges.
Did any of them stay? If they were billeted in their local villages, did they stay, or did they all return to London after war finished?
From what we know, most of them did return to London because they had family there, for example. Some people did marry locally, and then buy a house locally and sort of settle down. But I think most of those people have moved away since then. But yeah, there was a bit of both, really. Then some of the younger ones and people with family in London definitely moved back. But another lady who worked here, Mrs. Hazelrigg, she was sort of one of the secretaries, but in charge of the sort of female dormitories and the people who were sort of living here for supplies and what have you. Not the sort of matron character you might be led to believe, given that impression of being a sort of, in charge of the females and making sure they all behaved and what have you. But she married an officer locally, and he often called to see her while they were here. So, she did also settle locally for a little while, but then moved away.
What ho!
So when you come to Upton House as a visitor, because it is a National Trust property, how have the National Trust interpreted the history of the house? Because really you're focusing on that period when the staff lived here and worked here at the house.
That's right. I mean, we have quite a short period of history in which to tell our story. The house Upton was bought and sold really like any other house throughout its history, and it wasn't really loved and cherished as a home until Lord Bearstead bought it in the late 1920s. And so we have the period from the late 20s to the late 40s where they resided here, and that's most of basically the renovations and what you see today when you look around some of the architecture and the way the house is laid out. So that's the kind of part of history that we really have to be able to tell. And so we've spent a number of years talking about their life here in the 30s, and it was felt very much that we needed to kind of move on and really capture and start researching an area of history. We knew lots of exciting stuff had happened, but it was finding the details, and it wasn't until Mr. Blueglass's son or granddaughter came to visit and sort of started to tell us these stories. Now, Mr. Blueglass was one of the key bank workers who were here. So it wasn't until then that we really started to have something to grab hold of and could then really bring it all to life. And we're very pleased to have won a National Trust Award for our displays here. So, yeah, we're really proud.
And when you start to pick up those stories, does that open more doors? Because I would have thought you would have had a wealth of knowledge left behind from those years. But I guess if was it a case that people thought that nobody would be interested, or was it just something that people just kept quiet?
I think if you look at the period in time when the National Trust were given Upton House, which was 1948, so any stories about the war would have been so fresh in people's minds, and clearly it wasn't thought about at all. The main purpose for leaving Upton to the National Trust was as a place to house this amazing art collection, which could then stay together, stay in the countryside, not be split up, sent to private collections all over the world or end up in London, but actually be a place where people come and view the art. And so it's been open for people to view the art since the 50s really, and it wasn't until the National Trust really took over managing it in sort of recent years that we've been able to really start to do a lot more digging. We're now quite a number of years since the war, so papers are being released, more information is coming to light, so we're in a lucky position to be able to sort of discover some of this now.
And how do you convey that now to members of the public that come through the door? Do you do it by tours? Do you do it by interpretation? Do you allow hands-on activities?
It's a whole range of stuff here. Different things suit different people, really. So we've got tours that focus on our, various stories about the bank moving in, about what the family were doing, about the saving the art collection, sending it off to the mine. So we've got these three key stories that we tell. But most of the way people find out information through written information. But we also really encourage people to dig in and delve and have a go. The typewriters set up in our long gallery, which is the typing pool, the banking hall. Is where people can have a go and type a letter. It's been such great conversations, particularly between grandparents and grandchildren and whole generations, all interacting and kind of Granny used to use one of these and used to type on one of these, and it just brings it all to life in an age when many people under 20 really only know the internet. It really makes a difference, and it's just a way to start those conversations. And we've had such brilliant feedback about people enjoying it and it making them talk more and really get involved. But we really encourage people to kind of open the drawers and have a look and read the papers. The there's lots of interesting, if you're interested in banking and accounts, you can find out a little bit more, or you can just look at the bizarre looking adding machine and work out, gosh, my calculator is a lot easier to use than that. But yeah, so much to see, and there's so much detail gone into it as well. A lot of the stuff we've sourced from is original, and we've sourced it locally, because it's a sort of the 1940s period. It's a period where people still have a lot of this stuff available, so we've been very lucky to buy a lot of the knickknacks and bits and pieces to really bring it to life, particularly, say, in the female dormitories, and also on the notice boards with lots of posters and comments and newspaper clippings of what they might have been kind of looking at the time.
Is it a real move and a change from for organisations like the National Trust to bring history to life more in a way that children can touch and feel, and you can have a little nosy around and open a drawer and see what's in it? Do you think is this now a change in the way that we present history?
I think it definitely can be. It's been really popular. We've done it here before, and it is the thing that people really enjoy the most. You get the people who want to sit down and read an entire journal or magazine of the period to really get a flavour for what was going on and understand it. And people are just much more interested in sort of hands-on and visual stimulation these days. We still have some written information, which people are more than welcome to kind of have a look at. We have our lovely guidebook, of course. But there's all sorts of things. We also have a short video, which really helps introduce it. So you can view that online before you come. Or, in fact, here we've got a cinema tent set up, so you can view the old... and it just sort of sets the scene, really, of what people to expect. Because they're stories that are quite unusual, although they're in the context of, the wartime, which people do know a lot about. It's really nice to be able to put our spin on it and in sort of various different ways.
What ho?
Is there can people come and visit 24/7? Are you open all year round? And is there sort of any special events that you have on throughout the rest of the year?
Yeah, we're open most of the time. We're open 6 days a week until the end of October, but we are open 7 days during July and August. So our close day is normally Thursday, but then come November, December, we are open 4 days a week. So the sort of long weekend, Friday to Monday, and then weekends through January. So yeah, we're always around and open. It's all on our website for details, but yeah, 11 till 5 most of the time.
And is it best to go to the National Trust website, or is there a direct one for Upton?
We've got our own page on the National Trust website, so it's nationaltrust.org.uk and then /Upton House, or just search for Upton House on the website.
Now, you have got some incredible kind of hands-on craft activities as well. I know here today there's a lady doing some rag rugging, so showing people the traditional art and craft of rag rugging, which lots of people will be able to tell you about. But you have another sort of special craft that you've resurrected, and you're hoping to go for a record.
That's right. Over the last year, we've been hosting our Banking for Victory exhibition. We've been really surprised and thoroughly thrilled with the amount of people who've been interested in getting involved in really simple ways like knitting. We've been knitting blankets and cushions and knitting squares, and people have posted them back to us from all over the country and all over the world. So we've been really thrilled. And we also had knitted Christmas decorations that people contributed to. We were getting little Santas and snowmen in the post, which was beautiful. So this year we are harnessing that and aiming for the world record for the longest line of knitted bunting. This is our victory year. We're kind of aiming to celebrate the end of the war. So we're really hoping to deck the whole place out with as much bunting as we can. It's all in red, white and blue, which is beautiful. It's just makes it really coherent and look together. We're having loads of people take away patterns or download them from the website and send us in their knitted bunting. We've got stripes, we've got patterns, we've got wording on them. It's been really lovely to see what people are sending in, and they're all really excited to see what we're going to do. So we're aiming for 15,000 triangles. Wow. That's quite a few. But the really nice thing is what we're going to try and do at the end of them is knit them together into blankets and then offer them to the homeless in the local area, particularly sort of Coventry and Birmingham, where in fact some refugees and so evacuees rather from Coventry came over to stay at Upton during the war. So we feel we have this kind of really nice, relevant link. So we're really hoping that we can knit them all together, and we're looking for people to come at the end of the year when we've got our record attempt, I'm confident, to help us put all that together.
So does it have to be one long continuous line of bunting? And if so, are you going to just sort of string it around the house? Because I assume you're going to run out of room in this particular room where it is being displayed at the moment.
Yeah, we'll definitely run out of room, that's for sure. I think it'll go around about 3 or 4 times. Yes, it's very strict rules, as you would imagine, for a world record, about how wide and how long and how big the triangles have to be, and the gap between the triangles on the bunting. So, yes, we've got 3 bunting coordinators, volunteers, to kind of help us manage all the bunting we're getting back, make sure that they're all to size. So, yeah, it's going to be great. We're going to put it all together in lengths, and then when we come for the record, join it all together and just see how far it'll go. Imagine round the garden several times.
I'm just looking at, as you say, some of these bunting triangles, and people have even used different wools. So you've got a sort of blue pearlised wool, and I just noticed the one in the corner, which is kind of a white fluffy wool.
I know, it's great, isn't it? I mean, a lot of it is what people have got in their cupboards in red, white or blue. So as long as it's those colours, I mean, ideally, the sort of the Union Jack colours is where we're aiming for. But really, it's to use up wool, and also for people to, go to town, get their knitting group involved, submit it as a sort of team entry. And we're hoping to have a bit of a judging session and invite people along, particularly and really reward the person perhaps who's knitted the most bunting, or the group who's contributed the most. So we're really looking to have a really great party at the end.
And can people, as you say, download off the website and then post their entry to you? Or I guess you'd actually like them to come and bring it in person and come and have a look at the great exhibition.
Well, I definitely think everyone should come and have a look, definitely. It really is great, and there's lots and lots to see and lots of time to see it. So, but yeah, you can easily download the information from our website. It's got the pattern and where to send it to. We're hoping as many things as we can. Every day we're getting new little parcels with, 5, 10 little triangles of bunting in, so it's brilliant.
Well, thank you for sharing your information with us here today, and for inviting us to come to Upton House and have a look at the beautiful house and the fantastic exhibition that there is here.
What ho!
Well, during that track, you may hear a little bit of background clutter, because young Edna's come all the way back from darkest Warwickshire after learning about banking. And is she counting her money? No, she's looking for the big yellow piece, and that's what all those squinkling sounds you can hear behind are.
Sorry, Harry, I was just looking for that one little bit that's eluding me at the moment, so I can finish off my Lego police truck.
You see, you should be learning about banking and about sticking your fine art in the deep freeze, or wherever it was in darkest coal mines, when it's all covered in soot and alike.
I did, Harry, I did. I learnt all about that. But I've just got to finish my Lego truck.
Righty-ho. Well, at that point, I better say toodle pip and...
Toodle pip from me.